I am pretty sure that all of us in western Massachusetts are happy to see the end of July this year. Our record-breaking rainfall last month wreaked havoc on many local farms, totally saturating the soils to the point where there was no oxygen left to nurture the soil life or the plants themselves. Local photos were circulated of growers standing in mid-calf water, pruning and trellising tomatoes. And for some folks, it has just been a muddy, miserable mess. Production has remained high in our well-protected high tunnels. The tomatoes are coloring up nicely, and the steady successions of basil transplants have so far beaten the scourge of basil downy mildew. Pole beans are just beginning to flower, and the first of several successions of cucumbers are just beginning to wane. Not all is happy in High Tunnel number 3 as portions of the eggplant continue to struggle. A few applications of diluted fish and kelp fertilizer have kept the plants alive, and while some portions of the beds are producing nicely, others are just barely hanging on. The peppers in High Tunnel 2 are really hitting their stride. Yellow, purple, and green turning to red are beginning to bear heavily. We may need to stake and string this crop to keep the weight of the fruit from breaking the plants. Outside in Field 1, the beets continue to produce sweet roots and amazingly clean leaves. The lettuce has been a struggle in all this wet weather, where both the lettuce leaves themselves and the mulched ground where they are growing just stayed soaked for days on end. But the continuous successions have helped bridge the inevitable gaps caused by rot. Green beans are coming on strong, and August's dry spell should provide some healthy harvests. In the first section of Field 1, we are seeing the effects of the new no-till treatment that was initiated last fall. Double and triple layers of unprinted cardboard were laid down, and then covered with 6 to 8 inches of shredded leaves from a local organic lawn service. The squash and pumpkin crops that were transplanted into this area seemed reluctant to grow. We had some worry that the soil was staying too cold under that heavy mulch layer, but we could find no instrument that verified that theory. Eventually, some heat spells in late June seemed to kick off their growth. All except for one bed closest to the beetle bank that began to lose entire plants, with the rest generally showing poor growth. That was a new, wider bed that was established this year, and it happened to fall on a former pathway in the old layout. 20 years of human foot traffic in all kinds of weather takes a toll on any kind of soil structure. If we could follow this largely failed crop with okra, daikon radish, sweet clover, or some other deep-rooted cover crop, we might be able to bring this bed up to full productivity for next season. Inside the propagation house, you can see more successions of basil and lettuce sizing up before they are ready to transplant. Another great use of this covered space is garlic drying. Shade cloth is hung to keep the sun from scorching the garlic, and our powerful exhaust fan keeps a lot of air moving around the drying bulbs at this critical stage of curing. Down in Field number 2, you can see the shallots on the left have begun to flop over, indicating that they are ready for harvest. In this section, the winter squash is being grown in open beds. The black occultation strips, which are made out of ground cloth, are being used to control the weeds in the path. In another section of the field, we have the same fabric to mulch both the bed tops and the paths. The porous structure of that fabric allows both air and water to reach the soil. In another section, the squash plants have started to run or spread out over the mulched paths. It is our hope that their dense, intertwined growth and large, shading leaves will successfully keep the weeds at bay. I'm sure that I don't show enough shots of the crew at work on Astarte farm, and it is only due to their unflagging diligence that we are able to produce food. This distant shot shows Amelia, Sadie, Sammy, and Kelsey clearing weeds out of a bed in preparation for the next crop. July's excessive rainfall created banner conditions for weeds, but on the bright side, it has helped to keep their roots close to the surface, making them somewhat easier to pull. They provide excellent feedstock for our farm-made compost, and in their own troublesome way, they make a strong contribution to the diversity of soil organisms on our farm. Looking across the farm, you can see some remnant living grass paths, a bed of kale and Swiss chard, and the beetle bank showing off its diverse growth and wind-blocking potential. Sandwiched between the two sections of trellised field tomatoes are the field eggplant, and their vigorous uniform growth is in sharp contrast to the plants up in the high tunnel beds. The different shades of green represent different eggplant varieties and not a variation in the soil fertility. At the far end of the field above the trellised tomatoes you can see the halo of asparagus fronds that are beginning to feed the root crowns that will store enough energy to provide us with next year's early spring crop. Up in Jim's grapes, the crop is looking good despite the weird July weather. His berry patch continues to provide a steady harvest into August. Just uphill of the berries, the pollinator meadow is working its magic of continuous sequential blooms. The perennial sunflowers are just getting started, and the partridge peas are providing both nectar and pollen to a host of beneficial creatures, and that echinacea just shines in the morning light. For more information on our farm and our no-till, no-spray practices, please go to www.astartefarm.com. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe and like.